What is journalism?
That's a great question. Holding powerful people accountable. I think telling the truth no matter what, saying inconvenient things, kind of what you said in the intro, especially to your own side. I think that's something that both political sides fail to do. And I think that's a big reason why you see so much radicalism come to the surface of both the Democrat side and now the Republican side, which we'll get into, because people are unwilling to hold their own side accountable for the sake of political victory or cultural victory. So their side's ascending, their side's in power, they just won an election. It's inconvenient to say that your side is doing something wrong because that might, you're kind of a party pooper at that point.
Yeah, maybe I should have asked, what journalism is supposed to be.
What it's supposed to be, yeah. What it's supposed to be is just telling the truth.
This is Sparta!
We're going to have a fun conversation because I got my friend Mik Olson in the studio. And for those that don't know, Alec, his twin brother, is the podcast producer. And Mik's done some work for me here with behind the camera. And today he gets to be in front of the camera. That's right. And so we get to have some fun. But let me give a little context to this podcast because it's going to be different than what you've heard before. And we're going to get into some topics that are a little bit uncomfortable, but we're here in the spirit of truth. So today's guest, Mik, is unafraid to say what others won't. He is a journalist and contributor to the Federalist, the Christian Post, and Not the Bee, at least formerly. Yeah. And he's taken serious heat for covering one of the most uncomfortable topics in modern conservatism, the rise of Christian nationalism and the woke right. So today we're diving into the media collapse, fake influencers, and what it means to actually live by principle, even when it means holding your own side accountable. Novel idea, right? Welcome to the show, Mik.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I thought we'd start like this.
Yeah.
Like the question I gave you earlier, like what is journalism?
That's a great question. Holding powerful people accountable. I think telling the truth no matter what, saying inconvenient things, kind of what you said in the intro, especially to your own side. I think that's something that both political sides fail to do. And I think that's a big reason why you see so much radicalism come to the surface of both the Democrat side and now the Republican side, which we'll get into, because people are unwilling to hold their own side accountable for the sake of political victory or cultural victory. So their side's ascending, their side's in power, they just won an election. It's inconvenient to say that your side is doing something wrong because that might, you're kind of a party pooper at that point.
Yeah, maybe I should have asked, what journalism is supposed to be.
What it's supposed to be, yeah. What it's supposed to be is just telling the truth. Just telling the truth no matter what. That's a lost moral principle, I think, in our culture today on both sides.
Have you researched, when did it shift? Or has it always been this, and now we just actually have fact checkers?
I think that's a great question. I don't know when it started. I know corporate media has been pretty bad for decades. I think, you could trace it back to, when public television became a thing and there was PBS and these different ABC News, CBS, back when there were just a few channels. They were all kind of just repeating the same talking points. There's a lot of theories as to how much the CIA or different government, 3-letter agencies had to do with that. And I think that's been largely true for the last, 50, 60 years. And so in the response to corporate media being so corrupt, people figuring it out a lot during COVID, especially.
Mm-hmm. That was a big awakening for sure.
Yeah, there's been this big rise of alternative media, but then that has its own set of challenges and problems, and which we can get into for sure.
Well, I think about how long it's been, and we want to say that it's new, but then I go back to the moon landing. Yeah, and right. It was all propaganda.
Yeah.
And for those that still believe in the moon landing, I hate to break it to you. But that never happened.
I'm pretty convinced of that, that it, at least how they said it happened, didn't happen. Even Buzz Aldrin's been on record multiple times saying things like that. Oh, we didn't land on the moon. What you saw was Hollywood footage and things like that, which
Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
And if you look into the producer, Stanley Kubrick, he said some things about it as well. But even just questioning the fact that, hey, Richard Nixon called from a landline
Yeah.
to another landline
Yeah.
on the moon. And then they
Right.
somehow lost the technology.
Lost it.
And
Even though we're
technology
way
hasn't
more
advanced.
developed.
And we can't get back
We have
there.
more computing power in our pockets than they did then to send people to the moon, allegedly. And we apparently lost the technology to do it.
So at the very least, if you don't have questions about the moon landing, hopefully I just opened your mind a little bit.
Yeah, it's a fun one to research for sure.
I fully don't believe that it happened.
Yeah.
And so you think about that, if you actually don't believe that it happened, yet they broadcast from TV and everyone sat in front of their boob tube
Exactly.
and watched this thing happen, like they were coordinated. The government, NASA coordinated with TV,
Oh, yeah.
with media to propagandize the public that we made it to the moon.
I think the difference today is with social media, kind of to what you alluded to before, is you're able to see it in real time now, unlike they were back then, because they didn't have access to the internet. Internet didn't really exist for, until somewhat recently. And so social media certainly didn't exist. That's more of a modern invention. And with social media, we can fact check things live, and it gives voice to alternative sources, independent journalists, alternative media publications to in real time combat the lies that we're experiencing. Like, for example, with COVID, I think that's why we were so many people were so alarmed at all the censorship and people having their accounts deleted, being taken off Twitter, YouTube videos being taken off, people being banned entirely. And I think that's always existed, but at the rise of social media and the rise of the internet has, it's made it a lot more difficult for them to do that without getting caught immediately. So, because on one hand, it's the internet and social media is a tool of propaganda, but then on the other hand, it's a double-edged sword. It's also the thing that exposes the propaganda. So what they're trying to do is keep it open because they want certain narratives flooding the population constantly. But then at the same time, with those channels open, there's all the fact checking and alternative sources coming and proving what they're saying wrong. So again, we saw this with BLM, we saw this with COVID, we've seen this with so many different things over the last couple of years, with Ukraine and some of the other global conflicts that have happened. And yeah, I don't know. It's wild. So to answer your question, I think it's something that's always existed. I just think it's easier to spot now because of all this.
Well, it's interesting. I want to give everyone a little backdrop too, because I don't want to say that you're no one, but you're not a big name.
No.
And yet you've caught the attention of a lot of big names. And so take us back to like where it started, because I remember Alex showing me like you had like 6 million impressions or something, probably even north of that, on Twitter, just by stoking the fires by telling the truth. So to talk about that story a little bit.
Yeah. So I've always kind of been interested in politics. My brother will tell you it probably annoys him a lot, but it's something I've always been interested in. When I was in Austin, I lived in Austin for a few years. I started a YouTube channel with one of my buddies down there. We'd go and do street interviews. At that time, there was like height of COVID lockdowns, height of BLM craziness, right into the Ukraine stuff now that we're experiencing. And so there was constant leftist protests going on at the Capitol downtown, which that's Austin. That seems to be a normal thing.
Well, Austin's very much like Madison.
Yeah, very much like Madison, just bigger and definitely gets more media attention. So there's a lot more of, I think, organized protests like that happen there. So I would go and film myself talking to people, asking questions, things like that. At that time, I was also reading a lot. So I was really curious about what was really going on with BLM, for example. And I was digging into a lot of the theory behind it, critical work. Where did critical theory come from? Where did cultural Marxism come from? Gramscian Marxism, all of this different stuff, which is what's fueling the ideology behind these movements. And then I started from there, like going to these original sources, reading Antonio Gramsci, reading the Frankfurt School. James Lindsay is a voice today that's been really helpful on that front. That's where I had first encountered him. And so it's kind of been a slow process of being involved with this stuff and educating myself. And then last year, so I deleted all my social media for a year. And then last year I was like, okay, I'm going to make social media accounts again. And I'm going to really kind of hit the gas with this journalism stuff and start writing and trying to submit different places and things like that. And so I made a Twitter account. And then at that point, I also started writing for the Federalist, just submitting op-eds, one of me and my brother, one of our acquaintances, mutual friends, is there one of the editors there, and reached out to her and was like, hey, I'm because at that time I was writing on Substack a little bit. I was like, hey, I'd like to try to submit some stuff, because that's kind of how it works. And with a lot of these publications, anyone can submit pretty much. Most websites, whether it's the Federalist or Christian Post or different ones, there's like a section on their website where you can submit articles, and you fill out a little bio for yourself and send them, a profile picture they can use if they end up submitting your article. And so I kind of did that. And then I had our friend over at the Federalist help with that. And then from there, it just snowballed. And I had some big name people follow me. The guys that run the Babylon Bee, Seth Dillon, Joel Berry, James Lindsay, follow me. I quickly reached out to these guys right when they followed me, especially James Lindsay. I remember at that point is when I really started to report on this Christian nationalism stuff. What is this? What's really going on? This looks eerily familiar to all this stuff I just studied going on the left, and reached out to him. I ended up having like a 2.5-3 hour phone conversation with him one night. This is back when I had like 200 followers. It's like nothing. So the fact that someone like that who has 500,000, 600,000 followers would take the time to sit and talk to me for 3 hours, he's gaining nothing from doing that. That really stuck out to me. And then from there, it's just been developing different friendships and networking in the political world. And it's kind of snowballed. Now I think I'm up to 4,700, something like that on Twitter. I've been just consistently reporting on this Christian nationalism thing for the last 8 months. And it seems to be getting traction. And that's not a pat on my back, but I think it's a pat on the conservative movements back at large, because I think we are a lot more inclined to hold our own side accountable, which not always, which we can get into that as well. But there's a lot more people on the right that are willing to be a little bit more critical in their thinking, and to not be so tribalistic, to listen to when people on their own side are like, hey, we're going too far here. Hey, this is wrong. Hey, we need to watch out for this. So it's just been a matter of being consistent, trying to tell the truth, trying to write as best that I can, submitting consistently to different publications and things like that. That landed me a job at Not the Bee, which is the affiliate of Babylon Bee, run by the same people. Seth Dillon runs the Babylon Bee. He's the CEO. His brother Dan Dillon is the CEO of Not the Bee, and so they have very close relationships. A lot of writers go back and forth between the two. So it's been great. It's been a great experience. So it's been moving very quickly, way quicker than I thought.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
So you get you're submitting and doing a lot of stuff for the Federalist for over the last year, essentially.
Yeah.
And then that all blows up.
Yes. So it actually that blew up rather quickly. So I started submitting to them. I think it was in like August or September. I think is when I originally reached out. I'd have to go back and check the dates. Don't directly quote me on that. It's somewhere around there in the fall. That's when I reached out to our friend over at the Federalist. She was an editor at the time. Now she's the managing editor. And I think they only published like 4 or 5 of my articles. I submitted quite a bit more than that. But that lasted till December, and kind of right around Christmas. And that's when I noticed that, because before I even submitted articles to them, I had already started researching this Christian nationalism problem. I was familiar with a lot of the key players in it. I kind of already had somewhat of a roadmap at the time as to what was going on. And so I noticed that they published a few articles that were directly from one of the primary Christian nationalist, or woke right is what it's called, which we can get into what that means as well. Publications called American Reformer. I don't know if people watching this have seen that online at all.
I'm sure there's plenty that have, but go ahead, go into it.
Yeah. So the Federalist published a few op-eds from American Reformer. I think one of them was the director of marketing for American Reformer. They're like people that were directly affiliated, if not on payroll, with American Reformer. One of them's name is Terry Gant. The other one's name is Josh Abatoy. These are like the guys that run New Founding. So there's American Reformer and there's New Founding. They call themselves different companies, but they're run by the same people, and they have the same business address, even down to the suite number in Dallas, Texas. And so by all intents and purposes, maybe legally speaking, they're not. For tax reasons, they're not. But they're basically the same company. They have the same mission. New Founding is essentially, this is not hyperbole, they're building out Christian nationalist cults, essentially, where they're trying to take over small towns and move a bunch of their people in, buy up a bunch of land in small towns and move a bunch of their people in, and essentially commandeer rural towns. Right now they're doing it in Gainesboro, Tennessee, and Jackson County. And so that's been on the news. I've written a little bit about that for Christian Post. And so I noticed the Federalist was publishing their stuff and directly advertising for this company. And in the op-eds, they weren't disclosing who the people were that were writing the articles. And I recognize their names right away, which that's a lapse in journalistic integrity. It's either an accident or it's like a purposeful misstep where they're trying to cover things up. And one of the articles by Terry Gant that was advertising American Reform, he pitched it as like, this is just a normal Christian community and there's nothing weird here. And anybody saying anything negative about this just hates Christians having their own land and having their own property and their own dominion in their communities. That's completely inaccurate as to what's happening. And so it was a mischaracterization of what was really going on and what they really believed and what their goals were. And on the Federalist end, it was a misstep to not include that the guy that wrote that was the managing director of New Founding. And he just kind of pitched it like, these are my friends and I'm part of the community. And it's like, that's totally dishonest. Changes the whole story. And I reached out to, I'll just say her name, Kylie, reached out to Kylie, who was the editor at the Federalist at the time. I don't think she was the managing editor, but she's one of the editors. Reached out to her and was like, hey, I noticed a couple of these op-eds. I'm confused as to why these details weren't reported in it. Really polite email. It was basically like hey, just letting you know, here's what these people actually believe. And I gave her some information as to the ideology, the worldview, the political goals of these people. And the response I got back was very dismissive. It wasn't rude or hostile or anything like that. It was a cordial conversation. The email response I got back was dismissive, though. Didn't really take what I had to say seriously. She didn't do anything about it, as far as I know, as far as with her editing team or people at the Federalist. At least they didn't correct anything in the articles. They didn't take anything down. They didn't, write a disclaimer of any kind. And so I was like, okay, I just kind of left it there. I was like, okay, this is weird. I don't know why you guys wouldn't want to correct this if this isn't accurate. I mean, for your own reputation's sake, if anything. And I think I sent her one more email kind of explaining in a little more detail of what these people believe when they call themselves Christian nationalists. So when they say nationalist, here's what they mean. When they say that, like, different words, kind of here's what they mean by what they say, because they use a lot of familiar language. Similar to the left, they'll use familiar, polite sounding, cordial language to hide their radical ideas behind, like Black Lives
pro-life,
Matter. like pro-choice or like Black Lives Matter,
pro-choice,
or progressive.
Yeah.
These are like nice sounding words that if you disagree with the sentiments behind the words that they really mean, like for example, Black Lives Matter. If you say, yeah, I don't agree with Black Lives Matter, what you're really saying is you don't agree with the Marxism that's hiding behind the phrase. But then they'll accuse you of not caring about Black lives because of the phrase itself. So it's kind of a bait and switch, or a Mott and Bailey is a word that's commonly used for it. And so, anyways, going back to the Federalist, fast forward 6 months. There was a lot more that happened with American Reformer. They were actively partnering with neo-Nazis. Like there's this one guy called Raw Egg Nationalist on Twitter who has a men's magazine. There's like overt Nazi propaganda praising Hitler in the magazine. There's pornography in the magazine. They have a trans model in the magazine. Not stuff that a Christian publication, Protestant Christian, should have anything to do with. And yet they're partnering with these people. Nate Fisher, the guy that runs American Reformer, he's like tweeting praise about this guy and telling people to go check out his magazine. And then I think there's sponsorships in the magazine with American Reformer and New Founding. And so super, like, really bad. Something that you should, like, it should be a no-brainer that a Christian conservative should have nothing to do with that kind of stuff. But yet here we are, we're having to have these conversations now on the right. There was another article they published by this guy who has another anonymous account online, which is weird. A lot of their authors have anonymous accounts. It's like, why are they so afraid to just put their real name and face behind what they're writing? And then you go read what they're actually writing. It's like, oh, that's why, because it's obscene and it's horrible. And they had this guy write this article on dating. And this guy, so one of my other journalist friends, his name is Eli McGowan. He dug up a bunch of tweets from this guy where he was calling women I don't even want to say it on camera, it's that bad, which you shouldn't have to bleep out things from Christian authors.
Yeah. But
here we are. And so just saying obscene things about women, very like Andrew Tate adjacent kind of stuff. If not, some of it was even worse than I've heard Andrew Tate say. And they had this guy write an article on dating of all things. And they've since taken that article down, I think, since Eli and others and myself have pressured them on Twitter, especially over this stuff. And they've responded. I don't think it's genuine. So I reached back out to the Federalist because within this time period, I also discovered that their CEO is on the board of American Reformer, which would make sense going back to the op-eds, and they're advertising these companies. They have a vested financial interest in partnership if their CEO is on the board. And which again, that was never disclosed in any of their advertisements or any of their op-eds or anything about new founding in American Reformer. And so I tweeted at their CEO a couple of times, like, "Hey, I just noticed you're on the advisory board of this company that was not previously disclosed. Your editor never told me that. I don't know if she's aware." Things like that. Basically, trying to get his attention. Like, "Hey, I noticed this. Do you have anything to say about this?" And then I made this huge Twitter thread, basically walking through all this stuff American Reformer was promoting. They're promoting critical theory, critical race theory. They just had an article recently that literally, I think it was entitled "Why We Need to Embrace Critical Theory," which, why are we as Christian Protestant conservatives now openly telling people to embrace critical theory? This is overt Marxist philosophy. This is very anti-Christian, which is why we call it the woke right, because they're embracing this woke. Woke isn't just another term for critical theory or critical consciousness or cultural Marxism. And so they're just openly embracing Marxist philosophy and tactics in order to win politically. And they're outright just saying that. They're overtly saying that. The mask has kind of come off over the last 6 months. And so again, I was just kind of trying to get the Federalist attention. Hey,
you're poking the bear.
Poking the bear. Hey, are you guys okay with this? Are you guys okay with this ROG nationalist guy? Your company is partnering with him. Hey, are you okay with this critical race theory article? Your company's partnering with this. Hey, are you okay? Like just that kind of thing, right? This one thread I made, I think it's upwards of between 150 and 200,000 clicks now. And since then, the CEO's blocked me. The managing editor, Kylie, has blocked me on all social media. She was going around telling people that I was harassing her, that her husband called me yelling at me on the phone one day. It's been a whole mess. And the most frustrating thing to me about this is you guys are the people that are out here saying that you're the bulwark against the radical left. You're the bulwark against critical theorists. You're the bulwark against all this deceptive media. And you guys are engaging in the exact same kind of tactics as the mainstream leftist media. And I made that really clear in this thread that I made. And since then, I've gotten no response. American Reformer has not responded. Besides deleting a couple articles from their website, it's been a mess. So this is the state of conservative media right now. Nobody wants to talk about this or touch these topics with a 10-foot pole, which I don't understand. I don't understand why this is so controversial. And I don't understand why so many Christian conservatives are buying into this stuff and are just, unless it just is revealing their motives, which is just political victory at any cost, which is the opposite of what journalism is supposed to be, going back to your original question. And so it's just been a mess.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating to see like the mask coming off, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of it needs to go. And that's the power of social media. Like you started with, I believe that the internet, social media was truly designed to propagandize us.
Yep.
And instead it's working against them at the same pace that it's working for them.
Yes.
But that's only with proper journalism.
Yeah. That's why it's so important. And this is, again, it's hypocritical for publications like the Federalist or American Reformer to do what they're doing, because their whole mission originally was to do just that. And it was to fight against the mainstream lies and the fake news and all of this stuff that's been a problem in our country for decades, like we were talking about in the beginning. And they've ended up being the very thing that they hate, that they claim to hate.
Yeah.
And then it makes you question what the original motive was in the beginning. And so a lot of these people, I don't know if they started off with good intentions and money got to them and power got to them and political victory and authority got to them, and they've just foregone all of their alleged principles they once had, or if that's always where they were, and them pretending that they were honest, moral, good people was just a play to get the power that they have now. I don't know. I think depends on who you're talking to. It's probably different per individual, but there's a lot of it. There's a lot of grifters, even people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. It's just a whole mess. Right.
Yeah. We brought up two big names.
Yeah.
And I know you and Candace have had a back and forth.
We've had a couple back and forths. Yeah. She doesn't like me very much.
Well, I would say this is what I've noticed. I said this to Alec too, is it seems to be that, we may not agree with her, but she seems to stand on her business. Like whatever she believes, like she's willing to die on the sword.
Yeah. I would say this about Candace, and people might disagree with me that don't like her. She seems like she's at least sincere in what she's saying, meaning she believes what she's saying. I think some of these people, they don't believe, they're not drinking their own Kool-Aid. I think she's definitely chugging her own Kool-Aid, and she believes what she's saying. But I think she's sincere, but I think she's sincerely wrong. And I think she's dangerously wrong about some things.
On the Jewish side of things?
Yeah, especially, it's her and Tucker, they've been on this anti-Jewish kick for a long time. Really, it's really kicked off since the election. And there's a lot of theories as to why that might be. They've kind of done a 180 on Donald Trump in many ways, where Candace is out here saying, like, I never should have voted for him, and this was a huge mistake, and this and that, all surrounding this Israel conflict right now. Tucker has kind of alluded to similar things, and to where now him and Trump are butting heads, and Trump is now calling him Kooky Carlson. And so it's like, which fair enough. So it's that seems to be the hot button issue right now is Israel, largely because of this conflict with Palestine and Hamas over there in Iran. But the problem I see with this conversation, especially with Candace and Tucker and others, Daryl Cooper and Dave Smith and Ian Carroll, Jake Shields, a bunch of different people that are constantly talking about this on Twitter, is it's very lopsided. So the conversation with Israel starts with, according to them, it kind of starts with, yeah, we just are a little worried about foreign intervention in our government, or we're worried about getting into more global conflicts and wars. If that's all it is, hey, I'm right with them. I think that is a huge problem. I think there's far too much foreign influence in our government. I think we get far too involved in foreign conflicts. I'm not an isolationist, but I think we've gone way too overboard.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fine conversation to have. But that trickles very quickly. If you listen to these people and what they're saying, it trickles very quickly into large scale skepticism of Jews in general.
Yeah.
And I think the first part of what I just said there is often a cover for the second part, which is how they really feel. I don't know where that comes from. Again, that's an individual question. Each person is probably different. And I don't know if some of these people are using this anti-Israel Jewish skepticism. The Jews are the globalists. They're bringing back all these Jewish blood libel conspiracies that were prevalent in the Middle Ages, and then the Nazis dug up again. It's just the same old stuff we've seen time and time again. I don't know if they're doing that just to get social media attention, or if they're doing it because they actually believe that. Who knows? Or if it's because they're getting paid to say it. There's a whole bunch of different theories. Either way, it's not right. And so I've been pushing back against a lot of that. That directly correlates with a lot of this Christian nationalism, American Reformer, Stephen Wolfe, Joel Webbin, Right Response Ministries, all these guys. It all kind of correlates into one big bunch. And so this is primarily what I've been fighting, and I've been getting a lot of
heat for.
A lot of heat for it. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there's so much money behind it. Andy Frisella on his podcast has broken this down pretty well. It's like and he said it numerous times. It's like, there's reason to hate the Israeli government.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's certainly, much like there's problems in our government,
right, people
to hate in our government, very similar there.
Yep.
And, but that being said, when you say it's the quote unquote Jews, then that's where you get this
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not criticism of government. I don't think the Israeli government is beyond criticism, just like our own government or the German government or the British government. Like, there's no government that's off the table from criticism. But again, it's like, let's say you're attacking the British government or criticizing them, and then you take that and say, well, all British citizens are evil, or all people of Anglo descent are evil. That's essentially what's happening. That's insane, right? And the same thing in the United States. If you just start saying the American government did this bad thing, therefore all Americans are evil and they deserve what's coming for them and blah, blah. Like, that's just not true, right? But that's happening with Israel, but I think it's worse because it not only has to do with citizenship of people in Israel, but Jews at large around the world, even if they're not citizens of Israel, even if they have never been to Israel, have nothing to do with Israel, just because of their ethnicity or their religion. And that's where it's like, it gets really dark. It's exactly the same thing the Nazis did. And it started very similar, where the Nazis first posed as Christians. They posed as Christians who were going to bring back tradition and bring back, order and bring back law and order. And they were going to, bring back Christian morals to society. There's this movement in the Third Reich as it was rising that was called the Deutsch Christen movement or something like that. And there's another famous thing that goes along with it. They call it positive Christianity, which was essentially marrying Christianity with neo-Nazi philosophy, which is exactly what the woke right's doing right now. It's exactly what the Christian Nationalist, American Reformer, it's verbatim the same thing. And the reason for that, why that was so successful in Germany, was because Marxism was on the rise. It was rising in Eastern Europe due to the Bolshevik Revolution. It started to move into Western Europe, and it was plaguing certain parts of Germany, especially Eastern Germany. And they took that fear and they provoked that fear in the population and said, we're the only solution to fix this. Embrace fascism, embrace our neo-Nazi ideology, our positive Christianity, and then we will be able to solve this problem of Marxism. Obviously, the rest is history. We know what happened. Their movement wasn't much different than what the Soviets were doing at the end of the day, which again is why we call it today woke right and woke left. It's the same thing. It's like this horseshoe where the two, like the political spectrum, people think of it as a straight line. There's the far left and the far right, but really what it is, if you bend it like a horseshoe and have the two sides touch, that's more accurately what's happening. The two extremes are very similar. They both are authoritarian. They both believe in this like idea of unbound executives or dictatorship or monarchy. They don't believe in democracy or having the people really have a say in their own government. You go down the list, it's kind of all the same stuff at the end of the day. They both have the same concept of a critical theory, or believing that there's like this hegemonic force in society that's responsible for all the world's problems. And on the left, it's white people. It's the white straight Christian male. That's the cultural hegemony that we need to tear down. And that act of tearing it down is what social justice is. And then on the right, it's the Jews. But they're doing the same exact thing. They just swap out the races and swap out the religious groups or whatever it might be. And so this is a lot of what I've been dealing with, a lot about what I've been reporting on. And I think if conservative media doesn't start talking about this explicitly, especially at the higher up level in government, the Trump administration, this is going to eat the right alive, just like it did the left. So I think that's where we're at. Yeah, well, the left's had bad news.
The left's had a lot more years of practice.
Yes,
but you're on the front end of this, and hopefully people with bigger names and bigger followings and others can buy into what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Going back to those Christian towns for a minute, what is their purpose with that?
So according to them, it's to balkanize. So they want to balkanize the United States. They call themselves post-liberals, which is a fancy way of saying anti-constitutionalists, which they say we're originalists in the Constitution, but that's a whole other argument. But essentially, they want to go back to a time when the states don't have to necessarily abide by the Bill of Rights, and they can kind of do what they want. Back in the day, that was true before the 14th Amendment. States weren't legally obligated to follow the Bill of Rights. And we see all the problems that led to, which is why the 14th Amendment ended up being implemented, which said, hey, if you want to be part of the Union, you need to at least abide by the Bill of Rights, because these are foundational human rights, as it says in those documents. And so they want to go back to a time where we don't have to follow the Bill of Rights. We can implement blasphemy laws. We can have the church and state essentially merge into one conglomerate force, where the church is telling people what to believe. Some of these guys even advocate for having the church have like a list of doctrines or having the government have a list of doctrines that churches have to abide by. And if they don't abide by it, the government has the right to seize their property at gunpoint, literally take it and distribute it to people that are going to abide by the rules. Joel Webbin and his podcast host, Wesley Todd, said that. I don't know who those guys are, but this is essentially what they're doing. And they're practicing this out with these smaller communities. And it's really bad. And the funny thing is in Gainesboro, Tennessee, which is where New Founding is kind of headquartered and really trying this right now. They're buying up a whole bunch of open land in the area and trying to move people in and things like that. Is the locals in the town whose families have been there since the founding of the town hate these people. And they're like, we don't want to be part of your weird neo-Nazi experiment. A lot of these people are, when I say neo-Nazi, I mean, they believe in National Socialism. They believe in ethnic-based nationalism, which goes along with that idea of National Socialism, where each nation should be comprised primarily of one race of people. That's what they mean by nationalism. It's basically ethnic, like a race-based community living, and because they don't think that they don't think that people of different races can live cohesively together, which is again going back. That's exactly what the Nazis believed. And so it goes far beyond just like culture or religion. I think you could maybe make that argument culturally or religiously, where like Islam and Christianity don't mesh well. Islam and Judaism don't mesh well. Like it's hard to live in a society where those two religious structures are trying to rule at the same time. I think you could make that argument then, but that has nothing to do with your race. That has nothing to do with your skin color, your bloodline, any of that stuff. But they believe in radical hierarchy, which is exactly what fascism, neo-Nazi ideology is predicated on. It's this idea of radical hierarchy with everything, gender, you name it, racial hierarchy. So certain races are superior to others. This is where the whole idea of like the Aryan race came from. Mm-hmm. So they've adopted a lot of these ideas, and the mask is starting to slip. They're starting to say a lot of this stuff out loud. Some of these guys, one of the guys, his name is Andrew Isker, who was on Tucker's podcast, and Tucker talked about this new founding thing with Andrew Isker. And again, they completely whitewashed it and made it sound like it's just a normal, friendly Christian community and it's fine. And anyone that's mad about this or reporting on this negatively just hates Christians and hates God. And that was essentially the narrative. You guys go watch that episode. And yeah, it's just the whole thing is messed up. So this guy said on a podcast with this other guy who's also helping run New Founding, his name is CJ Engel. They're on record saying that we need radicals and we need to embrace critical theory. Stephen Wolfe also said this, that we need to embrace critical theory, critical methodology, as he says. They call themselves Machiavellians just openly, which is essentially saying the ends justify the means, win at all costs, lie, cheat, steal in order to win politically. That's essentially what Machiavellianism is. And it's this complete rejection of principle, kind of exactly what we were saying earlier, where journalism is this idea of holding to principles and then with those guiding principles, telling the truth no matter what. It's not about winning. It's not about winning politically, or as the Christian nationalists say, winning down here. It's one of their common phrases they like to throw around. It's not, that should never be our goal. The goal should be doing what's right, even if we lose, especially as Christians. We should understand that.
Well, that's called integrity.
Yeah, right. And so they don't have any integrity. Yeah. By their own standard of openly calling themselves Machiavellians, they're basically saying, we don't have any integrity. We will backstab you if it means we're going to win. I don't know why you'd ever trust anything that someone like that would ever say again. But here they are saying that, and they're somehow building a large movement around this.
Because people are searching for something different, right? Yeah. They know what we've been living in all of our lives is not right.
Yes.
And it doesn't feel right. It's not spiritually led. We're not sitting in virtues, or we're not living in virtues anymore. And so they're searching. And so if someone shows up that's a great salesman, that's how cults get started, right?
Yes.
Like this is how it goes.
They prey on your vulnerability.
That's right. Yep. And they're brilliant at it. But this leads me to one of the questions I want to ask is like, where does that Christian, let me tee this up. You have a lot of us right now on the right, that let's say it's middle right.
Yep.
That want faith back because we know that faith has virtues and has guidelines that allow us to live well, and the golden rule, which is written across all texts. Doesn't matter if you read the Quran, doesn't matter if you read Hindu. I don't remember what that book's called. The Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, golden rule's in there.
Right.
So we want some of that back, like in the middle right, anyhow. And so we think about like faith-based patriotism. So where does Christian nationalism cross the line versus faith-based patriotism to either idolatry or extremism?
Yeah. So there's kind of two schools of thought on the Christian side of things, and this is something that Christians have been debating for forever. There's the side that I would take would be the government has the authority to enact the second table of the law. In other words, the second half of the 10 Commandments, which is about how we treat each other. It doesn't have the authority to enact the first half of the law, which is our relationship with God, right? So the first part is, like some people say, the vertical side of the law, and then the horizontal side of the law. Speaking of the 10 Commandments. And so obviously the government can't force people to truly worship. Worship is something of the heart. Faith is something of the heart. The government can force people to mime worship, to go through the religious motions, but they're not actually worshiping.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and the government also doesn't have the ability to make anyone believe anything. You can put a gun to your head and say two, like in 1984.
Well, and that's the spirit of Christianity anyhow, because it's free will.
Right, exactly. And so they can put a gun to your head and say 2 + 2 is 5, and you can say it because you're scared, but do you actually believe that in your heart?
No.
They can't force you to believe anything in your heart. And so the Christian nationalist side seems to think that if we force people to mime out Christianity and force people to be externally Christian, then eventually they'll become Christians in the heart. But that's the opposite order that the Bible gives us. If we look at the early church, what changed the Roman Empire? Because eventually the Roman Empire adopted Christianity and it became the state religion. And, Constantine became a Christian allegedly, which is a lot of theories as to whether or not that was genuine or not. Nonetheless, Christianity had such a profound impact on Roman civilization that the emperor himself, at least for external reasons, converted to Christianity. And then later on, about I think it was the Edict of Milan was where it became decriminalized, and I think that was 317 AD. And then, 70, 80 years later, it became the official state religion under a different emperor. But what led to that? Was it the early church? Was it, in the book of Acts, were the apostles going around and appealing to Roman governing authorities or Jewish governing authorities and saying, hey, you need to force people to believe this. You need to force people to come to our church. You need to force people to mime repentance and do all these religious motions and partake of the sacraments and do all. No, they were just faithfully witnessing to people, just as many of us believers do today, building relationships, meeting in people's homes, breaking bread with people, suffering they were faithfully preaching the gospel at the expense of themselves, of their own life. And that's what led to the change in the Roman Empire. Was this pre-political action, had nothing to do with political authority. The political authorities were directly against them. I mean, if you look at, I think is it Acts chapter 4 where Peter quotes, they're in the midst of persecution. They just got arrested by the religious authorities in Jerusalem. And, the religious authorities release them because they've got this whole crowd around them. They're scared of what might happen if they, kill them just like they did Christ, or imprison them or do something like that. Speaking of Peter, and I think it was Peter and John at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter goes back to the believers, and there's this prayer that's recorded where he's quoting from Psalm 2, and Psalm 2 is part of it is a prophetic note to Christ and his coming sacrifice. But the other part of it is just showing the sovereignty of God over the nations and over governing authorities, is that no matter what, we're supposed to do what's right. No matter what, we're supposed to tell the truth and preach the gospel and be faithful to the word. And why? Because God ultimately it says he holds them in derision. He holds them in the palm of his hand, speaking of the rulers of this world. And so that's where our hope is. That's where our authority comes from as Christians. We don't need the government to force anyone to do anything. If we have that kind of authority, God is already our witness. He's already on our side. He already has complete control. And so, but the Christian nationalists seem to forget that. And they want to take that authority onto themselves and force people into their religious system. It has nothing to do with the gospel at that point. And the irony is that's not going to change society. They want a Christian nation. They want a nation that honors God, people are predominantly Christian, that's exactly how you don't get it.
That's exactly right.
And so
the fire and brimstone does not work.
No, it just creates rebellion.
Yeah.
And it creates rejection of Christianity, and it creates hard hearts. And so again, the best case of the opposite of that is the early church. The pre-political action, the faithful witness of the early church amidst suffering and persecution and personal loss is what led to the change of the entire culture. And then what happened? Because the culture changed, pre-politics, the politics changed. And so that's the order. But these people want to flip that upside down. So if people, so to your question, I'm kind of rabbit trailing a little bit, but to your question, what, like, people like you or me or others that are watching that are Christians, we're seeing secularism on the rise. We're seeing weird new age spirituality on the rise now. We're seeing liberalism and Marxism and corruption in our government and all this stuff, this complete abandonment of God. It's almost like the Nietzschean "we killed God and his blood is on our hands" concept. And we're seeing that in our own culture. Like, I would say that politics, like we automatically see that and we think the solution is political. But I think politics is a symptom of the problem.
I think it's downstream.
It's downstream. Politics is downstream from culture, and culture is downstream from religion. And so if we really, kind of like that example of the early church, if we really want to see our culture embrace faith again and embrace God and have moral structure and order to our society, it starts with the individual. It starts with the heart of the individual.
That's right.
And so it first starts in your own heart, right?
And in your own home.
In your own home, yeah. And then from there, with the relationships you have at church, at work, whatever, I think that has a far more profound impact than anything any politician can legislate. I mean, even thinking about abortion, for example, that was a huge issue. I mean, not the same way that we do it today, because I don't have the technology, but that was a huge issue in Greek and Roman culture back in the early church. Infanticide was a norm back then, where people would have babies if it wasn't the right gender. If it was a girl, for example, they'd leave it on the side of the road and just basically let it get trampled. And so one of the things that really was impactful in the early church, at least culturally speaking, and then eventually politically, was Christians adopting kids. So they would see someone leave a baby on the side of the road that they didn't want, and they would adopt it and take it in and take care of it and raise it. And so, and again, that had nothing to do with legislating to the government. I'm not saying it's wrong to appeal to the government to stop abortion. I think that we should be doing that. But it's that pre-political action that, and I'm going to keep harping on that ended up completely changing society at large.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think we have it backwards. I think our appeal to the political authority to fix all our problems is a lot of times based out of fear, which is, I think, for example, what the Christian nationalists are really motivated by. I don't think they're motivated by anything good. I think they're motivated by pride and fear, which are often the same thing. And they don't trust God. They don't believe what Psalm 2 says. They don't believe what Peter said in Acts 4. They don't really believe that God is as sovereign as he really is. And so they want to take control for themselves, because people that want to just take control, it's like they're scared. People that aren't scared don't feel the need to take control of others like that.
It's interesting that the Bible says, fear not, in so many ways, 365 times.
Yeah. One for each day.
Yeah. One for each day. And so when you're based on fear, like, well, he gave you the command 365 times to fear not.
Right.
So why are we not?
It's a big deal.
That?
Yeah. And, but they're motivated by fear. They want control as a result. They want solutions now. It's like immediate solutions, because they don't want to suffer. They're scared of suffering. They're scared of having their comfort taken away from them in some way, shape, or form. And so they want to grab control of the wheel of politics now to try and steer it in a direction where they're not going to face anything like any hardships. And I don't know if they've ever read the Bible before or studied the history of the church, but that's not how that's ever gone.
No.
And we're actually promised that's not how it's going to go. It's not only just, it probably won't go that way. We're promised that's not how it's going to go until Christ returns. But here we are. So yeah.
No, it's fascinating. I love the topic, because you go into thinking about the early church, like you were mentioning. That was one of the things that really got me over the hump as a believer, is like, you had 12 dudes. I'm just going to use modern terms, right? We got 12 dudes that followed Jesus for what, 3 years, right? Almost every day.
Yep.
Every day followed him, except for when he went off to the wilderness to pray.
Yeah.
And so they're recording. He had 2 scribes, but forget all that. He dies. That's historical evidence. Jesus lived, he died. You can argue if he was resurrected, you can make that argument, but there's witnesses. And then these 12 dudes, so whether you believe he died and rose again, that's on you. But these 12 dudes go and preach the gospel on their own accord, willing to die on that word. Like, when has that ever happened in history?
Right.
You can't get 12 dudes to agree on much of anything, first of all.
Right.
But then going to willing to die.
Yeah.
A brutal death.
And it wasn't just them either. It was this community that they built, the early church, where they were willingly submitting themselves to death and to imprisonment and persecution because of what Jesus did and said. And I don't know, like, I think that we've lost sight of that in American politics, especially as Christians in American politics, and just American culture in general. We're so obsessed with comfort, and anything that threatens our comfort is a threat to our very existence. And we need to do anything we can to stop that from happening. I think that there's an argument to be made, of course, about self-defense and especially defending your family or others. I'm not arguing against any of that stuff. But if our main mode of operation is trying to push away discomfort or suffering in any way possible, we're not only not going to grow, and our faith is going to be stunted, because that's often, I think, what God uses to stir our faith and to get us back on the right track and sanctify us, is through suffering and hardship. But we're also not even pragmatically really going to get the thing that we want at the end of the day. We're gonna welcome, which is the irony of the Christian nationalism stuff. They're actually welcoming in the very tool that they say they're scared of, which is tyranny and authoritarian control and dominance. And so they're scared of that on the left, but then they're ushering that in. And who do they think is going to take the power?
Right.
It's, but anyways.
No, that's good. I mean, as business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this podcast. Like, we know that growth is on the outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And whether that's with faith, whether that's with you in the gym, working out a muscle,
right,
whether that's going through a new challenge in your business, it's all on the other side of your comfort zone.
Yes.
It's getting uncomfortable. So that's the whole irony behind it. But you've been recently uncomfortable because you're not with not the be anymore. That's hard to say.
Yeah.
Not with not the be anymore.
Yes.
Because of calling people out. And so, like, what's the cost of really being on the other side of, like, sticking to your integrity and sticking to actual journalism and doing what's right?
So I remember having a couple conversations with some friends about this kind of right when I started this whole journalism process. And it's something I've constantly try to remind myself is it's a bar I've set for myself of, I'm never going to take any opportunity or money if it means foregoing some principle that I have. Not going to do it. Like, never going to be for sale. I just won't do it. If there's some opportunity that I get offered and it comes at the expense of me self-censoring and shutting my mouth about something that I think is important to talk about, I'm not going to take it. I don't care how much money's on the table. I don't care. And because I don't think that there's no money or social clout that is worth having a damaged conscience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, nothing is, like, money cannot buy a clean conscience. And so
you should tell that to some of these social media influencers in the business space too.
Yeah, for real. Like, it's something that we're such a narcissistic society, and everybody's like, I just want to have 1 million followers and have $10 million and have all this social clout and influence. And none of that stuff is bad in and of itself, but it matters how you get there. And if you get there by selling out your principles and by doing shady things, by lying to people, especially in politics, by
pay for play stuff.
Yeah. Or keeping your mouth, just simply omitting things, keeping your mouth shut about things that you know are wrong. That's just, I don't know how people sleep at night. Like I could not sleep at night. And so I've just set that bar for myself. And I've always been someone who has very strong opinions. I'm very strong-willed, and which can be a problem at times. But I think that channeled in the right direction can be a useful tool to stick to my principles and to not budge on things that I think are valuable. Now, with Not the Bee particularly, the issue there is, with at least from my understanding of it, is so there's several things going on with that, and I'm not putting them in any similar category as the Federalists with this stuff. They understand this stuff. They're ideologically against both the woke right and the woke left, which is why I'm comfortable working with them. Seth Dillon and Joel Berry and Dan and a lot of these other guys are great dudes. But I think it's just a matter of a difference in strategy on how to approach these things. And there's the business aspect where kind of what we were talking about before we started rolling here, where, if you have a business, you have a responsibility to put money on the table for your employees. They have families to feed. You have a family to feed. That's important. And you have to strategy matters, right? Tactics matter. You don't always just want to be out there like a berserker going crazy, shooting at everyone and everything, which is.
And you became a threat to
I became a berserker shooting at everyone and everything. And so, so I understand where they're coming from. They've since kind of let me go, at least from the staff writing position I have. They've since sort of offered me an op-ed, just exclusively writing op-eds that are on their opinion half of the website. Because before I was doing just news updates and things like that. So I'm not, the opportunity there isn't completely severed. It's just different. And it's because I've been reporting on this Christian nationalism stuff. There's been some of these Christian nationalist pastors that have been lying about me, saying that the Babylon Bee is sending me to go attack their churches and go attack their ministries and things like this. None of that's true. None of the reporting we've even done for Babylon Bee has had anything to do with Christian nationalism at all. The only report that's been exclusively with the Christian Post, and on my own personal Twitter account. But nonetheless, because my name is on their website, people know that, and they know that I work there. And so they're getting a lot of the ricochet, a lot of the shrapnel from what I'm doing. And so they're like, okay, we don't want the shrapnel right now. But I would just encourage not only them, but any media brand or any journalist, especially if you're a larger publication, the woke right will do exactly to you what it did to leftist media or to Democrat media. It ate them alive. Nobody on that side stood up to the woke left. Next thing you know, the woke left is the majority party. And it's taken over media. It's taken over publications. And that's exactly what's going to happen if we don't stand up to these people, because they won't stop. If they see that you're letting people go, or you're caving in on different things, or if you're doing what the Federalist is doing, where you're actively partnering with them, well, that just incentivizes them to double down and to keep doing what they're doing. It gives them more power, feeds them, because that's all they care about is power. And so and what I would say is now's the time to be bold. Now's the time to stand up to this stuff, even at the expense of personal loss right now. It's worth it in the long run. It's my opinion. People might disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But that's my opinion, at least based off what I've seen kind of on the front lines covering this stuff. This is exactly the same thing as the woke left, just with right-wing flavors and goals, you could say. They have the same strategy, same tactics, same end goal, same type of mission, you could say. They just want to control everyone and everything. And it starts with trying to balkanize the country, which I think is what both radical sides of the political spectrum are trying to do. The end goal is revolution, right? That's the goal of Marxism is revolution. There's always revolution.
Hence why 20 million illegals were invaded into our country.
Yep. To stir revolution. Yep. Create unrest, create chaos, so that leads to revolution, so they can enact some new political order where they're on the top. So destroy everything and then rebuild from the ashes is kind of their goal. And both the woke right and the woke left, this is their explicit goal, which is why you see them now attacking MAGA and the whole MAGA coalition overtly, because they've kind of rode the coattails of MAGA as it's the political ascending authority right now. And now they're trying to co-opt it and turn against it and take the power for themselves. But again, it's all about power. It's all about creating this confusion and revolutionary fervor among the population, which again, it feeds right into all the Israel conversation and the anti-Jew stuff, trying to make everybody scared and create these. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that are true, but a lot of these are just designed to freak you out and to make you feel like either everything's hopeless and you have to become a complete radical in order to solve the problems right now, or to just give up entirely and not fight back at all. So this is the goal. So
yeah. Well, let's go into what
kind of
role.
rabbit trailing here. I apologize.
No, it's all right. What
There's so much.
what role should the church and pastors be playing as we speak
that's a
right
good
now?
question.
And I have an opinion, but I want to hear yours first.
I think that they shouldn't. I think ultimately churches and pastors, they should be preaching, like there's a pastor that talks about preaching the whole counsel of God, right? And so if you're preaching the whole counsel of God, you're going to arrive at political issues. You're going to talk about government. You're going to talk about social issues. You're going to talk about finances, and you're going to talk about business. You're going to that's all in there, right? And I think a lot of pastors, they skip over a lot of that stuff because, again, they're scared. Just like people in politics, they're scared of the backlash. They're scared of getting canceled. They're scared of losing money. They're scared of losing members. And so they're scared of losing followers online if they have online ministries. And they're not going to say certain things because it's inconvenient. And they'll go along with the crowd. You saw a lot of this during BLM.
Saw it a lot during COVID.
A lot during COVID as well, where all these pastors were just like, okay, this is what everyone's doing. And let's just go along with Black Lives Matter and cultural Marxism, even though this is a complete assault on biblical values entirely. But they went along with it because they just went along to get along. That was the thing to do. Same with COVID. You had tons of churches just going along with it, shutting down, forcing people to mask. There were some churches that even had like vaccine mandates, or they were separating people in their congregations based off vaccine status. Like I think Tim Keller's church was doing that in New York. This was a huge problem. But now we're seeing this on the right, where this creeping problem of right-wing critical theory and Christian nationalism is creeping up in churches, especially more conservative Reformed churches. And I think pastors need to take the exact kind of bold stance that they did against the woke left, because a lot of the pastors that are falling prey and a lot of churches that are falling prey to this woke right stuff were the churches that were at least at some degree faithful during that time and didn't give into BLM and didn't give into the COVID stuff. And that's why they've gained so much popularity now. Even guys like Joel Webbin, who runs Right Response Ministries down in kind of in Austin, Texas area, he's blown up since then and he's got over 100-something thousand YouTube followers and I think like 50, 60,000 subscribers on Twitter and other platforms, because he was he was spot on with a lot of that stuff originally in rebuking the left. But now it's like there's this ring of power on the other side that they're seeing, and they're all taking it. They're not understanding the sins that exist over there. And I think people in those congregations need to start standing up and speaking up just like they did with the woke left. And pastors need to be explicit about this stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, when you say explicit, my opinion is this: actually teaching the Word of God.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on this, is like not your interpretation, not what society is placing, and not kind of sidestepping to be politically correct, but actually teaching the Word of God.
Yes.
Because that is the one truth.
Right.
And so again, if you're a Christian, you believe this, you probably should be if you're a pastor, like actually teaching the Word of God and standing on that.
Yep.
And not cowtailing to
Great
political
example.
stuff.
Great example with the Jew stuff, the Jew hatred that's becoming so prevalent online. Even guys like Nick Fuentes and others. Every time I open Instagram now, I feel like I see a Nick Fuentes reel or one of these things talking about Jews are evil, Israel's are evil. It's for some reason the thing that's being pushed in the algorithm right now, which is a lot.
Certainly
of
your algorithm.
Certainly my algorithm. I'm sure I've heard this from many others as well. Even people that aren't reading or searching any of this kind of stuff, it's just popping up. But as far as that, all you got to do is turn to Romans 9, where Paul explicitly, he talks about how his sentiment towards the Jewish community, who by the way was persecuting him at the time, who were stabbing him in the back essentially. And even then he was like, I would give up my own life and my own salvation if it meant the salvation of the Jews. And in that same passage, he talks about not being haughty, not being arrogant towards Jews, speaking to Gentile believers in Rome at the time. And that's exactly the attitude we should have today. It's even if the Israeli government sucks, it does not give us authority as Christians to be hateful towards these people. We should love these people just like we love anybody else, and pray for their salvation ultimately.
Love thy neighbor as you do yourself.
Yeah, like the Bible is so clear about all this stuff. You don't have to go very far to see this stuff. And I think that, again, a lot of, whether it's the woke left or the woke right, you see this common theme in churches that are teaching this stuff, where they're starting to get further and further away from the Bible. They're getting into more into whether it's church fathers or reformed leaders or secular philosophers like Aristotle and all this stuff. And it's a complete distraction from what the Bible actually has to say to us. And I think pastors need to, like, if you're someone that's a pastor and you're not willing to do that, don't be a pastor.
Yeah.
Like, you're in the wrong job. And
you knew what you were signing up for.
Yeah.
You're going to go against the world.
Yes.
So go against the world.
Right. Who cares about politics if you're a pastor?
Right.
I mean, who cares about it in the sense of you getting political power, authority for yourself or for your church? That should bear no relevance in your ministry. But here we are.
Well, it's just interesting because I think about it from a business standpoint, and me being somewhat of a public figure now, whether it's keynote speaking, author, coaching, social media, whatever you want to say. Like, I know I'm not for everyone. Right. Like when I have a onboarding call with a potential client, like I tell people who I'm for and who I'm against. Like, like you're not going to blend well with me if you're looking for me to be a sniper on, I don't know, like just a business issue.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that you're right as a whole person. And so I have great friends that are great business coaches that I'll refer to. If like you have a specific business issue, whether it's a financial issue, a mindset issue, whatever it may be, I'm going to refer you to them. Now, if you want to talk about being the best husband, father, mother, daughter, like whatever you're looking on your personal life, as well as get a business, I'm your guy.
Yeah.
So I know I'm not for everyone. So like, why would a pastor go in there and go like, yeah, I'm trying to be for everyone?
Yeah.
It's a faulty premise from the get-go.
It's weird because so a lot of these really reformed conservative churches, they constantly complain about the bigger mega churches and they're seeker friendly and they're just appealing to the world, and which is true, a lot of them. Not all of them. I don't think the size of your church bears any relevance on how good or bad your ministry is. I think there's a lot of really big churches that are really good that are really good and they're faithful to the word and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But it's kind of become a stereotype in America with like the seeker-friendly megachurch where they're just trying to make the unbelievers or liberals or whoever it is feel comfortable. And they've kind of, as a result, done away with kind of uncomfortable biblical truths, whether that's with, again, the BLM, the COVID stuff, as that applies to that, homosexuality, things like that. And they've caved on a lot of key biblical issues, marriage, family, to do that. And so they have been criticized from the more Reformed, Protestant, conservative churches that are now, a lot of them, giving into this Christian nationalism stuff for that. But then the Christian nationalists are actually doing the same thing. They're also appealing to the world. They're also seeker sensitive to their own worldly audience. It's just a different worldly audience, but it's the exact same problem. They're still being just as they're still they're being just as unfaithful to the word as those churches that they're criticizing. It's the same problem at the end of the day. They're not submitting to the word of God, which is ironic because a lot of these guys, especially the Reform crowd, they love to hype on sola scriptura, the Bible alone. This is our only authority, but they're constantly appealing to other authorities and they're not listening to what the Bible has to say over these key issues, because it's not convenient for them with their political goals to say what the Bible says.
So one thing I want to ask before we end here is, we probably disheartened some people on some of their favorite media people.
Yeah.
So whether it's Nick Fuentes or their favorite influencer, whether it's Graham Allen, whether it's Candace Tucker, some of these right-wing people that are paid influencers.
Yeah.
Where can they be seeing real journalism?
That's a great question. It's becoming less and less frequent. Honestly, I think Not the Bee is really good. Christian Post has been my favorite so far. They've been so consistent. They've been consistently rebuking the left and standing against the craziness over there. They've also been consistently rebuking the far right and all this weird neo-Nazi stuff. Most conservative journalists and publications will only do one. Like they'll only rebuke the left because they're not really going to lose subscribers. They're not going to lose their base. They're not really going to start any wars internally. They can drop grenades and drop nukes on the left all day, and it's not really going to affect their bottom dollar. And if anything, it might enhance it. But as soon as you start turning and saying, hey, like your own team, hey, this is wrong. We need to stop doing this. We need to start talking about this. This issue is a big problem. Now, all of a sudden, there's finances at play. They're going to lose subscribers. They're going to get attacked. This is what's happening to so many different publications. And so it's important to look for consistency. So like people that I've seen be consistent, obviously people, like I said, over at the Christian Post, the Babylon Bee guys, Seth Dillon's great. Joel Berry's awesome. James Lindsay's another one that's been super consistent for the last decade. Jordan Peterson's great. A lot of the Daily Wire guys are really consistent. Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, they haven't given into all this crazy woke right stuff. So they're still out there. It's just a matter of looking for that consistency. Are they going to apply the same standard they apply to their opponents, to their own team? That's what people have to constantly be paying attention to. And the people that don't, and they only want us to talk about the bad on one side, those are the people you got to watch out for.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If they start their sentence or video with, oh my gosh, can you believe this?
Yeah.
It's probably not someone that's going to attack their own
Or if
side.
they don't show you what they're talking about. So this is something Candace and Tucker do a lot. They'll just allude to things, or they'll make broad claims about something, but they're not going to show you what they're actually talking about. And they're certainly not going to show you the opposing side. So they'll do this with Israel. They'll talk about all the sins of Israel and the Israeli government, but they're not going to talk about Iran. They're going to whitewash Hamas. Like Tucker just had that Russian Orthodox nun. Did you see that episode?
I didn't see that one, but I did just notice
completely whitewashing Hamas.
I haven't seen anyone report on this, but speaking of like the evil of Israeli government, there was that sexual predator bust in California. I think it was LA area. Where eight or more were busted for trying to solicit underage girls and kids. And one of them was high-ranking Israeli intelligence officer. And he
it's a huge problem.
And he got back to Israel kind of scot-free.
I understand. And I've even gotten flack from some of the real pro-Israel people that I've become friends with over reporting this stuff for saying like, hey, AIPAC actually sucks. They give money to far-left Democrats all the time. They're not to be trusted, which is the Israeli, American Israeli, which it's not an Israeli organization. It's an American organization, but there's a whole bunch. Anyways, they suck.
Collusion.
Yeah. The Israeli government leadership sucks. That's fine to say. Mossad is horrible. Just like our own intelligence community here, and just like our own federal government here, just as corrupt. But yeah, it just goes back to those anti-Jewish tropes, the inconsistency. If we're gonna complain about foreign influence in our government, and all we do is talk about Israel, like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, well, we're not actually able to have an honest conversation then about what's happening. Because, for example, Qatar gives way more money than, in fact, out of the top 10 countries that are lobbying in the United States, Israel's at the bottom. It's literally number 10. There's 9 other countries that are above them. Qatar, China, I think Saudi Arabia is on this, a bunch of different countries. Like China, for example, they spend over $16 billion a year, last I saw, which people can go look up these numbers. It's somewhere around there, 15, 16 billion on Western media influence alone. Most of that is social media in the United States. Qatar is on record paying over 250 conservative influencers on social media to push probably a lot of this anti-Israel stuff, because they have a vested interest in not necessarily being so kind to Israel. They're more or less a proxy to Iran. Hamas is a proxy to Iran. And so you're seeing a lot of this, Israel's the devil, and Iran's not so bad. You have Tucker Carlson interviewing the president of Iran, just completely softballing him, and then he interviews Ted Cruz like a week or two before, and he's like just hammering him as hard as he can. It's just, this is what I mean, the lack of consistency. Like if Tucker Carlson truly believes that foreign influence is the problem, then start talking about China, start talking about Qatar, but he won't. So that's the principle for everybody watching. Look for consistency. If there's not a lot of it, And so it's pretty easy to spot actually, because of there's not a lot of it. Some of those publications, and honestly, a lot of it's just like smaller accounts on Twitter or Instagram.
Yeah.
So like my own account, like Eli McGowan, like Will Spencer is another good one. There's so many different people I've interacted with and met over the course of doing this over the last 8 months to a year that are awesome, that are very consistent. And so, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I always end with this, and we've covered a lot of unpopular beliefs or topics. So what's an unpopular, it could be on anything,
Yeah.
we talked about, or something just totally off in your heart. What's an unpopular belief you hold to be true that you think most others disagree with?
Oh, this will be related to this. That propaganda exists just as much in alternative media that it does mainstream media.
Yeah.
People think that that's the escape from propaganda. Oh, it is not. It is just as prevalent. Propaganda is just as prevalent in, InfoWars and the Alex Jones adjacent stuff and Tucker Carlson. Like there's just as much propaganda. It's just different form. And the propaganda is sold on that side by convincing people, again, that they're the bulwark against the propaganda. They're the opposition to the propaganda. So trust us. They're kind of doing the same appeal to authority that the mainstream media does, but the appeal to the authority is saying we're not the authority, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's still the same kind of appeal to authority.
Well, it goes back to like that old quote, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convince the world it didn't exist.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So if they're, the devil's pulling the wool over your eyes saying that the alternative media is the only stuff you can get truth from while they're propagandizing you, like
it's very Gnostic. It's like this secret hidden knowledge. Like we hold the keys to what's really true out there. You'll see a lot of that with even guys like Alex Jones or a lot of these dudes. It's very much like we understand how the world works. Come to us for the enlightenment on how the world works and what's really true out there. But that is if you buy into that and you're not being discerning and you're not doing your own research, then you're going to be led astray. You're going to be sucked right into the same propaganda that you once were with the mainstream media. It's the exact same thing.
That's right.
And a lot of people are susceptible to that because of what we experienced, especially during COVID. We saw the lies from the media. We saw the overt censorship happening, and people are just hungry for truth. They're hungry for a resistance against that. And in that hunger, bad people who are grifters and are liars are going to capitalize on that vulnerability, and they certainly have. And now we're starting to see the fruits of that. Yeah. So,
where can people follow you? Twitter,
Real Mik Olson, RealMikOlson. That's my username on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Those are the only three I have now. I'm going to be building out a website as well and start posting more of my own stuff, kind of separate from the publications, and so that'll be coming soon. So
awesome.
Stay tuned.
Well, everyone give Mik a follow. Yeah. Here's the deal. We talked about this earlier in the podcast, it starts in your home. It starts with you. And especially if you're living in a Christian household, you believe in the Bible, then living out biblical truths. And you are the change. You're the change that you're trying to create. So make sure it starts with you, starts in your home, starts in your community. Stop looking for a savior in government. Be the savior that you need. Remember, the good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.
This is Sparta!